I saw like the clip where he was nearly going to say the R word. Then he kind of held himself back from it. Yeah, I did nearly drop the R word, yeah. Yeah, I picked up on that too. Strongly with the person who mentioned that they were born before the internet. Like, that's, like, what is my excuse? Bro really reaching. Bro's munching here. Munching here. It's called a brain, and it's autistic or not autistic. Truth. Like, I doubt the internet could change your brain into a different neurotype. Yeah. I think, you know, like, there is the idea of neuroplasticity, and, you know, our brains do change according to the types of behaviors and things that we do, but not to the extent that someone could become autistic. That's for sure. I wouldn't say that I'm naturally autistic. So he's got some kind of supernatural autism here. I have no idea. Natty autism versus enhanced autism. Anabolic autism. Bro's watched too much internet and has developed enhanced autism. Have you been personally concerned or worried about the increase in autistic people seemingly across the internet? You might have heard some stuff about TikTok, you know, changing our children's brains, making them think they're autistic, and perhaps you might have taken a gander at the good old autism fake disorder cringe subreddits or YouTube videos. Well, I've got a video today because YouTuber Gerbert Void has made a video called How the Internet Causes Widespread Autism. And this is going to be a funny one, I think. He's quite an interesting, quirky character to take a look at. But I'm interested to see like what his actual sort of views and takes are on this, and we can sort of see if it's if he's got the right end of the stick. So let us get into the video, see what Gerbert's got to say. It's very interesting then.
Gerby. I'm about to kill on this beat. I'm about to eat this beat. I'm about to nut on this beat. Look. I've been pimping since the stork. Got a girl with green hair and now I'm listening to Bjork. If he got beef, I'ma turn him into John Pork. I'ma pull up with that chopper and I'll leave him on the floor. The towers fell down to the floor. On 9/11, I'm at 7-Eleven. I'm sipping on a Slurpee. I'm doing lots of burpees, I be getting in shape. The Twin Towers fell and that was not great. Look, woo. It's really crazy how a white boy like me ends up carrying the rap game. You know, it's just crazy how these kind of things work.
Debatable, but I mean, he's got some gumption, that's for sure. But what the hell is this? It is a video from Gerbert's Void.
Who would have thought, you know? Who would have thought, you know, a white boy from the... You know, I came from humble backgrounds, but I still end up carrying the rap game. Just spitting these bars, and it's like... It's a lot. It's a lot of responsibility, honestly, because, like...
Come on, Gerbert.
Nobody even comes close to my lyrical mathematics or, like, any shit like that. Today's topic is autism, as you probably saw in the title. I already came up with the title before this. I'm recording this. I haven't written the title, but I have it. How the Internet Caused Widespread Autism. It's a good title, because some people will find it obvious, and some people will be like, no. But that's what makes it good, man. The discussion, you know, it's all about the discussion and these deep topics, and it's like crazy. So, autism. We all have a little bit of autism. It's a spectrum. That's what they call it. Just like being gay.
There we go.
Right? So we all got a little bit of...
I'm immediately in there with, like, an incorrect take. Here we go. It's like the first thing that he says about autism. Oh my god. It is a spectrum, but it doesn't mean that everybody in the world is on the autism spectrum. That is for sure. You can see it in two layers of a spectrum. You can see it as the whole ASD 1, 2, and 3 in terms of like functioning and expression of traits, which is how a lot of people view it as. The other way is to do with the intensity and the amount of different traits that someone has, sort of like the diversity of traits that people have. It's a very common misconception that everybody is on the autism spectrum. Do people who aren't autistic have autistic traits? Sure. Are those traits often like blending into other diagnoses? Of course. Does not mean that if you have like obsessive compulsive disorder and you like routine and you have rituals that you are autistic. You've got a little bit of autism in you. It doesn't work like that.
A little bit of tism. And some people more than others. You know, you remember back in SPED, some of those kids, there are like 5 different types of autism too. So it's different. It's an umbrella. It's not like, there's no like brain scan for autism. It's psychology.
They have actually done some brain scans. They have found that they can somewhat like spot or pick up like autistic brains. There's a few people that spring to mind, like Temple Grandin, who got their brain scanned, definitely showed that they were autistic. But usually, you know, he's right. Yeah, a lot of the time it is based on psychological diagnosis. There's
some like nebulousness there, but there are specific things you could look for. And back in SPED, you know, during elementary, middle school, you remember some of those kids with TISM, they were barely able to talk, you know. Or maybe that wasn't TISM, but you know, the point still applies.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of autistic people who are sort of non-verbal to a certain degree, or non-speaking, which is, I think, how a lot of people within the autistic community like to refer to it as. Because, you know, verbal stims, echolalia, things of that nature. But yeah, not everybody is non-verbal. And it tends to be that the individuals who fall somewhat higher when it comes to the ASD, sort of 1, 2, and 3 diagnosis, that they tend to struggle a bit more with communication. And some of them can actually speak, and I've been to see someone who would be considered to have ASD, like 3, and they're like a public speaker and they do training and stuff. It's really, really, really interesting person. Can't remember the name of the person, but yeah, it can be the case sometimes. I feel like this should have triggered my fight or flight. Yeah, well, this is the reason for this. You know, we can all band together in somewhat autistic safety net in order to take on the many interesting views that people have on the internet of autism. We should stop saying tism. Do you not like tism? I think maybe like the word tism is like somewhat annoying because people who don't know a lot about it start rumbling on about like autism, and that's the word that they tend to use. Maybe makes me uncomfortable. Yeah, it's more of an association with the type of person that says it. That for me, you know,
being sensitive, but they were like no, that sort of thing, just to describe what I'm talking about, you know. But some of them,
dude, he's not pulling any punches, is he? Oh my god, we're only about 3 minutes in, and he spent most of his time rapping. And he's just absolutely just like mocking people. What the hell?
Some of them were like kind of like pretty normal. You know, like Rupert over there, he really likes Bionicles, but he's like a normal, smart dude too. And you ask him why he's in SPED, and he's like, I don't know. It's chill though, that we just like watch movies and eat crackers all day. But they got me in there, it's whatever. You're like, all right, Rupert, shout out to you. And he's like, you seen that new Bionicles? I'm like, no, shut the fuck up, dude. That's all you talk about, you idiot.
Idiot? No. Oh, I love Bionicles. It was great. This guy's got some crazy takes. But the thing is, I think one thing to somewhat contextualize like the way that he's talking about it is he talks like this and about things in a very sort of dry, flippant way, like pretty much everything. So I don't think it's particularly about autism. I don't know if that makes it any better, to be honest. I mean, making fun of people who can't talk.
I have a notes here because I want to really hammer. Daddy wants to hammer it home. So the point of this video, because autism is a developmental disorder. They diagnose it in the first 2 years of your life. They see signs and they say he's...
It's a neurodevelopmental disorder classified into the medical system. But actually most people don't get diagnosed when they're 2. That is just like kind of the bottom end of diagnoses for people. A lot of people can actually be diagnosed in their late 40s, 50s, 60s. I've seen early 70s is probably like the oldest that I've heard of someone getting diagnosed. This guy is funny. I don't know if he's trolling, but it's definitely something. Yeah, it's kind of this dry sort of flippant sense of humor or acting. I definitely do think he's putting on a character, I would say.
He's got TISM usually. Now there are adult diagnoses, but it's labeled a developmental disorder because most times they find it when you're young, because it's kind of just like a type of person. You know, there are different types of autism. Some of them are like actually a disability, but the type where like you hyper focus on certain things and you're just really interested in those things, but you're sort of socially weird. I think that's just a type of person, you know? I don't think that's really a disability at all. I think we need those people.
Oh my God. He's flipped from like... he's gone straight into the social model of disability. Yeah, I never have any idea of what this guy's going to say, but there you go. I mean... Definitely it is a disability, but I mean, you could argue, and you know, I do quite often on a regular basis talk about, you know, how a lot of, for myself, particularly the disabling elements of autism tend to be brought on by other people who don't particularly understand or want to accommodate me, which is, you know, it's natural, we're a minority, but that tends to be the reason why it's a difficulty for me. Mental health, comorbidities, things like that tend to be like the most disabling aspects of being autistic for myself. Like just in isolation. Bro is Mr. Unpredictable and Stupid Opinions. Let's give him time to breathe. You know, let's see what else he's got to say. I mean, it's a pretty long video, so.
People, I think that's just a type of brain that is out there and they're important.
I like that.
And it's no wonder why they're sort of like, there's a proportionately large amount of those people, and when it comes to like people who are like 3 standard deviations above the mean IQ,
yeah,
a good amount of them are going to be autistic because that's just how it works. You know, they're really smart at that thing, and that kind of comes with the territory being sort of nerfed socially.
Not totally right. It tends to be above or average or above average intelligence. It's just that there are some characteristics when it comes to decision making which do lend itself a bit more towards the logical side of things, so we can give people that impression. Also, it tends to be a lot of people who do have a very fabulous vocabulary that they use. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it's good, and it's great for lateral thinking. It's great for like divergent thinking, as some people has characterized it as. So there's definitely some good things when it comes to that. And he just said it would be nerfed socially. Yeah, I mean, in the context of like neurotypical social norms and communication, 100%. In the context of communication with other autistic people, actually not so much. There's been some studies on that, so it's interesting.
So when it comes to, but here's what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that the internet like fully makes you autistic, because I think that's innate. I think that's innate in a person. But
Yes.
there are very specific autistic traits that the internet feeds into and can manifest. So, you know, since it is a spectrum, maybe if you are like 50% autistic and you get exposed to the internet at a young age, now you could be full blown by the time you're an adult. Right? Maybe something like that could happen. But really what I'm saying is,
I don't know whether he's talking about the autistic community when it comes to like masking and stuff, or whether he's talking about like people like adopting behaviors from like influencers and stuff. I don't know which ones he's talking about because 50% autistic. Yeah, I was only 50% autistic until I joined Instagram.
If you just look, I'll do this later. I have them written down, but these autistic traits, they're like things that the internet can create in a person and can feed into a person if they are already there. And there's already been a lot of evidence supporting a correlation between media consumption and ADHD. Even back in the 90s, there's plenty of studies showing how TV and ADHD are correlated. It lowers your attention span to watch TV, and it causes attention hyperdeficit disorder. So imagine, well, we don't have to imagine, we have the studies now, how far it's come. YouTube, even videos like this, you probably already scrolled down to the comments. There's all these videos on the sidebar. The algorithm, its sole purpose is to find what you'll want to click on next. And then you have a phone in your pocket anytime you could pull out to fill any boredom gap in your life. And have short form content, things like TikTok, which are just meant to...
The issue here is that, like, I do agree with the premise of what you're saying, but he's kind of getting it a bit wrong. Like, he's saying that these exacerbate things, but, having, in general, ADHDers tend to have a difficulty with impulse control, get distracted quite easily. They do tend to seek out more novel and exciting things. And the best way to sort of create novelty constantly is by looking at various different things, consequently after another, which is what, like, social media is, basically. So it's whether you want to say, like, this makes you more ADHD or lowers your focus even more. Because I don't know if, I think that there is something to say about that, but I'd say also, like, the nature of social media is definitely, I think, a little bit more attractive when it comes to neurodivergent folk who do sort of seek out that novelty, I would say. Is he talking about undiagnosed people? No, I think he's talking about, because I think in his mind, most people are kind of caught when they're younger. So he's talking about, like, autistic people growing up, maybe, or ADHD people in this circumstance. Why don't people do their homework and research before they give an opinion in video or podcast? Rhetorical question. Because there's that whole effect that you see with people, Beginners, people who are just kind of diving into it, tend to, like, overestimate how much knowledge they have on a certain topic. The longer that you actually spend researching and gaining knowledge and experience in a certain area, the less, like, you tend to under-represent, like, the amount of knowledge that you have. So, you can imagine there's a lot of people who just dive in a little bit into it and kind of feel like they understand the whole thing. Still, there is a big difference between learned behavior and ADHD, 100%.
Meant to condense as much information or comedy or data in a compact package just for your mind to get a quick hit. And you could do that at any time, and you could do multiple things at the same time. Lots of young people, I've seen this, it's a real tragedy. They're watching a TV show and they're scrolling on TikTok. Double trouble. Really just frying their attention span. And it's no wonder why it's decreased. So the correlation is clearly there between ADHD and internet consumption. And this happened to me, too. When I was a young... ADHD might be a developmental disorder as well. Let me look that up. ADHD. I'm not going to...
I mean, just blatantly just putting it out there. Hasn't done research on it. Oh my god. Guys, this video has 83,000 views. Gerbert has about 107,000 subscribers. Pretty much all of his videos are like this. I do find him quite funny. Not gonna lie. I think it's just my sense of humour. One thing actually that I do want to speak on, because I do see this a lot within the online advocacy communities on Instagram, and also when it comes to people talking about, particularly talking about ADHD. A lot of people think that dopamine is the thing that makes you feel good, which is it's a bit of a misconception. And I do know this because I did a lot of modules in university about the brain and how it works. But dopamine isn't the thing that is like the rewarding feeling that you get from things. It's actually the doing molecule. So dopamine encourages you to do things that are rewarding. When you feel good from things, it's usually a whole cocktail of different sort of neurotransmitters and hormones and such. Particularly like endogenous endorphins, the things that make you feel like good about doing things as you do it. But dopamine is the motivator. So usually when you do something that is rewarding to you, you get all of those releases happening and you feel great. Dopamine basically sort of gears you towards doing the same behavior. So it's a little bit different, and it does get on my nerves, I'm not going to lie, just because of the misinformation, but it's understandable. It's pretty tied together, and I can understand why people sort of make those assumptions, but usually the more rewarding something is, the more dopamine is released to encourage you to do it again. That's why you hear a lot of it in terms of like addiction and things like that. Did not know that. Yeah, it's a very common misconception. I don't mean that literally. I mean that what Red Sunglasses just said was weird. Yeah, it's really simplified, but it isn't that simple, 100%. I mean, it pretty much is communicated the same way. It doesn't really change anything, but it's just a little bit different to that. Dopamine is the doing chemical.
Show the screen. I'll have to. Is ADHD a developmental? Yeah, it is. Okay. So when I was young, I was diagnosed with ADHD, but like borderline. So not full blown. I just barely qualified to get the meds or whatever, which I took for a short amount of time. Didn't like them, stopped taking them, thank God. That's a different topic. But now I think my ADHD is like full blown bad, like really bad. My attention span is in the gutter. And that's because, I was exposed to the internet. I spent a good few of my teenage years chronically online, I would say, unfortunately. And this has mental effects.
I would also say that I think, I don't know if it's something that is exacerbated by social media use or not, but there is quite a difference between going to school and being an adult. Like, there's significantly more things that you have to focus on and manage with your executive function in a day. ADHD doesn't tend to be like my area of sort of interest or like research. I've done a little bit and I understand kind of like the main sort of basics of it and perhaps a little bit more nuance through my podcast and stuff. But I'd probably say there's more stuff that you have to focus on, like manage as an adult. So I don't know if it would necessarily like be exacerbated. And also I'd be really interested to know if any ADHDers are watching. I know like the advocacy around some of the language use is a bit, from what I've seen, it's a little bit less talked about than perhaps like in the autistic communities. But I'd be interested to know, like, is there some like terminology, like, do you find someone saying that ADHD is worse, like, and like a bad thing? Like, do you view it as something like separate to yourself? Or I'd be interested to know.
And when we're talking about ADHD, there is a connection between ADHD and autism. They happen oftentimes together. And scientists haven't been able to pinpoint exactly why this is, but I could think of many possibilities that make sense. Namely, that having a shorter attention span can disrupt your life socially. It's harder to have a cohesive conversation. You're always distracted, thinking of other things. It's harder to be an active listener. And also, a key aspect of many types of autism is hyper-focused, being very focused on certain things, having like insular specific interests. And ADHD, it makes sense how ADHD is connected with that as well, because when you have ADHD, you will tune out anything that you're not immediately interested in. You won't be able to focus on anything that doesn't directly appeal to you. So the only things that you will be interested in or be able to talk about or think about are things that are able to capture your attention.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that perhaps ADHDers might experience. Interests tend to be a little bit different in general. I mean, one of the proposed things that a lot of people talk about between like why autism and ADHD is so interlinked is that it could just be an expression of the same thing, which is, you know, it's hard to necessarily disagree with or like dismantle that opinion, because like we don't know. It's based on psychological traits, and it could very well be that it is a expression of the same thing, just in a different way. But yeah, when it comes to interests, ADHDers do tend to have that more, or ADHDers even might tend to have more of that kind of switching between things. In general, from my own life and talking to others, it does seem that autistic people do tend to have a pretty good like set of core interests that they like, and maybe a few things that they kind of cycle through like most humans do. Make it stop. You want me to stop? I'm not trying to make fun of a kid. I'm sure he is well intended. Yeah, I think so. I don't know how old he is, and also like I don't know at the point at which his character is switched on and off. You know what I mean? Like, it seems that somewhat he's exaggerated sort of his personality in some respects, but I don't know at what point he's being serious, you know, or whether he just likes having this kind of, I guess, was it dismissive kind of chill. You know, I don't really care about like the specifics of stuff kind of attitude. I don't know. Who knows? I have autism. My roommate has ADHD. I think it's interesting to see the crossover. We both have executive dysfunction and interoception issues anyway. Yeah, and also like socially, it's interesting because like there just tend to be like some social differences for both autistic and ADHD individuals. But they tend to be different. And I do know people who are, you know, ADHD, and it tends to be that their social difficulties more come in from distraction and not being able to like keep lasered in on what someone's saying for an amount of time. Not always, but you know, sometimes specifically. Which
unfortunately is just probably going to be a lot of new media because it's the most stimulating. TV shows, anime, video games, things like this. And this is the unfortunate part about autistic people now, is that in the past, I mean, before the digital age, when I say the past, people who are autistic, there were always these people with these type of brains that hyper focus on things, and they were socially disconnected, you know, that comes with the territory. But they had to have their outlet, their sort of the thing they would focus on. And those things back then would be like way more useful than they are now. Like now, because of how it works, because of the digital age, these autistic people are just going to be all interested.
It feels like he's still talking about ADHD, like in my head. like what he's talking about sounds like ADHD to me. But I can agree with the premise that perhaps like having more sort of useful skill-based things to focus on would be better, but it still sounds like ADHD to me.
In, you know, things like anime and video games, this is what you see. Things like the internet and just consuming. But back before we had these advanced forms of consumption, this new media, these autistic people, their hyper-focused interests would be way more impactful and useful. Way more interested in math, way more interested in, you know, even something like trains, and they'd go on to create a new train engine. Maybe there
is still many autistic people out there who like trains. And actually, like, the whole thing about autistic people being great at maths and hyper-focusing on maths is, like, it's pretty silly misconception. There are a lot of, like, particularly people who are interested in, like, technology and PCs. That's why you see, like, a high density of, like, autistic children, perhaps in, like, Silicon Valley. What was I going to say? Man, this video is, like, it's throwing me off. Oh, math, of course. Yeah, maths, that was going to say. There seems to be a much higher density of people who engage in more of the creative side of life, rather than the logical kind of mathematics side of things. Just from my experience. Or historians, particularly people who are really clued up on, like, history or, like, countries and cultures and such. I haven't really come across many autistic people who are great at maths. I've come across one person who's good at coding. I was 5 years ahead of maths in school. Used to be able to do calculus in my head. That's pretty sick. Well, there we go. I've met another person.
They're even into fiction, but they're like reading novels instead of being totally immersed in this new media. And reading novels is like the healthy way to, you know, be interested in that sort of thing. And then they'd go on to create a great story. Things like that.
I don't think there's anything wrong with having a hobby that doesn't have any creative or productive outlets. Like, I think everyone wants something like that in their life where they don't have to, you know, like, do anything productive. I think a lot of people have those. I have those. And I do a lot during the day and a lot of different things, but I still have things that I like to do that are not productive. You know, that I don't think that's changed.
So that's just a thought I had. How, like, you know, these autistic people now are in a much more unfortunate position because from a young age the things they will be attached to are a lot less useful and a lot more destructive to themselves and, you know, to society as a whole.
Society as a whole. Guys, stop consuming YouTube. You're damaging society. I kind of get the kind of the premise of this. I mean, there is a lot of people who do talk about, like, the damages and evils of social media and stuff, so I see why he's taking this angle. But also, the things that really, really damage autistic people is not to do with what our interests are. In fact, we do tend to excel particularly on those interests and can use them for the workplace, if possible. The issue comes in with rising through the workplace in terms of, like, social, you know, understanding, like, the social kind of political sides of the workplace. Also, specific jobs that do require talking to people can be sometimes quite difficult. Not everybody. Do know some amazing salespeople who are autistic. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the difficulties that we have are not down to us. It's down to the way that society is constructed, the social norms, the thin sliced judgments that people make, the difficulties with being sort of comfortable and happy in the workplace as compared to our neurotypical peers. It's definitely not to do with having an interest in social media.
But back to the topic of how the internet manifests autism, we've established this correlation between ADHD and the internet and ADHD and autism. So there's one thing. And there's already plenty of studies, if you look up Romano et al., that show there is not a causal relationship. We haven't, you know, pinpointed that there is a causal relationship, but between autism and compulsive internet use, or CIU. The explanation for this isn't causal. It's that people who are autistic are more likely to have compulsive internet use because this is where they find their online insular communities that fit in with their more arcane sort of insular, their interests, right? Their interests that a lot of people in real life they might not be able to find. So they're associated, but we're not sure if they're caused, but we can infer some things, and that's what the point of this video is. So
There is definitely no way that online use is causes autism. Absolutely absurd claim. It's not how it works. It's not. It's definitely the one way. Like, that's just ridiculous. Probably a lot of the reasons why a lot of autistic people tend to use the internet a lot is because it's difficult to find people who will accept us, and we do have a lot of negative experiences with people. We do tend to be lonely and isolated and have more mental health, social anxiety related things within us. And so, you know, humans need connection. Humans need to talk and feel validated and, you know, be a part of a group. Receive knowledge and experiences from other people to grow as humans. I think that's probably the reason why we do tend to do that. Not because of like compulsion to like, you know, becoming like addicted to the internet. I think it's just it's an effect of not being integrated properly into society, I would say. Wonder if he provided a reference list. I'm sure he did. Okay, he didn't. I mean, to be honest, like, I am not the best for giving references. Let's take a bit of an intermission because there has been some wild claims going on here. Let's have a look at some of the comments. Oh no, I must be losing my focus. Thanks, Gerb, for saving rap. Without you, I don't know what we'd do. You really showed those neurotypicals who's boss. Being autistic and having a touch of autism are very different. People need to stop lumping near every person on the planet into that first label. Again, a lot of people who are consuming the whole TikTok causes autism stuff, I would imagine. Interesting name you've got there, mate. I work in ABA. Oh, okay, here we go. I once had an in-home client with autism that would literally call his mother a MILF right in front of her. Even though it was probably one of the more tame things he said. The amount of things he said were totally out of line, just out of pocket. Or crazy. Telling your mother you wished she was dead, I'm not kidding. And these are very smart kids, mind you. It's just the worst thing, young, non-verbal boy that remains fixated on a tablet for 8% of their waking hours. It's sad. I don't have much to comment on that, guys. We all have a little autism. It's a spectrum, like being gay. Oh, my lordy, lordy, lord. The comments are worse. Is that how I got autism in 1990, before my parents even had a home computer or a dial-up internet? The early internet ways just got me. I know, not AVA. I mean, we're having fun with this, guys. Like, we knew going into this that this wasn't going to be like a comprehensive, detailed analysis of autism and internet use. Just Gerbert's interesting takes.
A few key autistic traits are restricted interests, repetitive behaviors, problems understanding emotions / body language, and problems maintaining or creating close friendships and social anxiety. So these 5 things. So when it comes to things,
those are the criteria. Yes, they tend to be the things, but not everybody fits into all of them. Just want to highlight that.
Things like restricted interests, you could definitely see how the internet would play into this through echo chambers, through algorithms finding exactly what you want. It feeds into this autistic compulsion to only care about these specific things. I actually have a quote here from a book called The New Media Epidemic by Jean-Claude Larcher, I believe. And the price of the apparent ease of communication through the media is unfitness for direct encounters. In the universe of total internet, Each individual is steered towards creating his own virtual space where he will be answerable to no one. Everyone becomes the monarch of his own territory and has no further interest in entering the space of another. So you just create this, like, this, all your interests are
I think it's, you know, he's talking about echo chambers, and that is something that social media can create. If you do find yourself, like, particularly on one side of YouTube, and you don't really hear many opinions to the counter, it's likely that there is a lot of those videos. And I'd recommend, and it's something that I've done, and it is quite difficult to, you know, when you watch a video on a specific, like specifically when it comes to like social political things, that you try and find the opposite of that and see what they have to say. Or like, you know, I will sometimes like watch another like streamer who has, you know, would be considered to be like one side of the argument, react to another person, and vice versa. So my YouTube is definitely like very wide and varied, and I do see like a lot of stuff from a lot of different sides of the argument. But yeah, social media does have a tendency of doing that. Yeah, exactly, leading to confirmation bias. But it's definitely not like, it's not there for anyone, and it only requires you to, you know, look for stuff and, I guess, fill your YouTube database about what the kind of things that you want to watch, with conflicting sort of different sides of the opinion. To be honest, maybe that book could be interesting. Yeah, of course. Like, I'm definitely not saying that there aren't echo chambers. I mean, I've seen a lot of, you know, so I'm not immune to it. You know, it's quite easy to fall into a specific slice of the internet and, you know, not really hear much contrary argument and not really know that other content explaining it is out there. 100%. In a lot of different cases, even when it comes to autism, I would say. But it's about making that kind of small active effort to perhaps listen to stuff that you don't agree with. I like listening to points and perspectives that I don't agree with because it's just interesting to me to see how other people think about things. This man just tried to discredit the very algorithm that's bringing in viewers. Like, say, you are a tile on a wall over echo chamber. Yeah, I highly doubt that this person has much, like, experience within like the advocacy communities. Oh my god.
Insular. The internet feeds into this, and you just have your own like virtual world.
Yeah. Right?
And this feeds to this autistic, you know, thing where you just have these restricted interests that...
It's the stretches. It's the stretches that I'm finding funny. Like, this happens, okay, yeah, I agree with that. But then he's like, oh, and this means something about autism. Man, like, if you're looking for stuff about, like, I don't know, trying to think of like a very popular thing like Five Nights at Freddy's. Like that seems to be something non-productive that people enjoy watching, learning about. Like, of course, like if you're wanting to go online, you're not going to watch like how to knit a scarf if you're not interested in knitting a scarf. Like if you just want to watch Five Nights at Freddy's videos, then that's what you like. That's what you want. It's not a bad thing necessarily. I think maybe when it comes to like specific, like very strong opinions, I think that is the point where you need to step out of the echo chamber. But there's nothing wrong with like finding like a particular piece of entertainment interesting and wanting to pursue more about that. You know, it depends. It's very dependent on what we're talking about. Ah, yes. Ah, no. Exactly. Thank you, Austin. You're amazing. Giving a gifted membership to Green Giant. It is your lucky day. And if you want to, after this, Green Giant, I do have the season 3, episode 1 of the 40 Auti podcast up for my members a couple of days earlier. It's going to go out, I think, later on Wednesday. But if you want to view that before it goes live, then You can now.
Often don't translate into the real world or into real healthy community. Also with repetitive language. Now this might be a little bit of a stretch. These things might not be exactly correlated, but what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear repetitive language is all these mimetic phrases. Back in the day, bruh, wacky slush, oh hell no, this band kid kind of shit. There's that. But even
I highly doubt that is the main, it sounds more like a social normative kind of language thing. I think most autistic people that I've talked to, or actually all of the autistic people that I talked to in school, didn't do this kind of stuff. What is it? It's like mimetic behavior. I'm seeing a lot of mimetic behavior in your video, Gerbert. I'd probably argue that autistic people are less likely to do that and are more likely to adopt a very traditional style of texting using punctuation and things like that over using text speak, or at least that's something that I experienced. But yeah, some things, but only because they're funny, and I've got some sort of delayed echolalia when it comes to particular pieces of content. But I'd argue that everybody has that to some degree. We all say things because it's funny.
But even if you go down to TikTok comments now, it's all the same shit. TikTok comments are when you go to shorts or TikTok comments, the IQ is 25 points lower than if you look at the comments of a longer form video. It'll be a TikTok video will be a guy eating a sandwich, and then the top comment will be bro, really munching, or something like that. It's yeah, what the fuck? I really don't get a lot of them. A lot of them are not clever at all. It will just say bro and then what he's doing. It's actually unbelievable. What else? Repetitive language, insular interest, we went over that. Problems understanding emotions and body language. So I think when you're exposed to YouTube videos or this sort of content, TikTok clips, at a young age, they're so overly expressive and hyper real and strange. I think it could really fuck up your social cues, your body, your ability to read faces and body language. So I think this would specifically apply to kids very young seeing this sort of thing. I don't necessarily know if this happened. I don't think this happened to me, Some other of these things, I think they do happen to me. I think I'm pretty autistic,
Oh my god. The body language is more related to this concept called cognitive empathy. Autistic people tend to have more of a, what do you say? There was something that I came across recently from Neurodivergent Insights that was talking about there you go. Autistic people tend to have more of a cortical cue processing, meaning that we have to use a lot of our frontal lobes, our brains, to try and figure out what people are trying to get across. Whereas holistic individuals, people who aren't autistic, tend to do this thing called subcortical processing, which means that it's just a natural kind of thing that goes on and there's not really much attention paid to it, actively, cognitively trying to figure it out. That's a lot to do with why we might sometimes struggle with the social cues. It's just not natural to us. The emotions, obviously alexithymia, massive one, pretty common for autistic people. Difficulty noticing, identifying emotions. Again, not related to the internet. I'd say a lot of autistic people mask watching TV shows. So they learn behavior from TV shows and YouTubers and stuff, but I'd say that that's more compensatory rather than the core reason to why people would struggle with these areas.
I don't think I'm naturally autistic that much. When I was a kid, I did this a lot with my hands, so they thought I was, but I don't think I am.
Stimming.
Maintaining, keeping close friendships, social anxiety. This is something I think I went over a lot. When it comes to internet addiction, I don't have any references on this slip for this, but it's true. Maybe you could look it up yourself, you lazy son of a bitch. But there are...
The irony. The irony, maybe you should look it up. I mean, man's like his body language is not like typical for like someone that you would consider to be like confident and stuff. He's looking down a lot. He's not making any eye contact with the camera. He's got his glasses on. Maybe he does have a bit of touch of the autism, as he explained, but I saw like the clip where he was nearly going to say the R word. Then he kind of held himself back from it. Yeah, I did nearly drop the R word, yeah. Yeah, I picked up on that too. Strongly of the person who mentioned that they were born before the internet. Like, that's, like, what is my excuse? Bro really reaching. Bro's munching here. Munching here. It's called a brain, and it's autistic or not autistic. Truth. Like, I doubt the internet could change your brain into a different neurotype. Yeah. I think, you know, like, there is the idea of neuroplasticity, and, you know, our brains do change according to the types of behaviors and things that we do, but not to the extent that someone could become autistic. That's for sure. I wouldn't say that I'm naturally autistic. So he's got some kind of supernatural autism here. I have no idea. Natty autism versus enhanced autism. Anabolic autism. Bro's watched too much internet and has developed enhanced autism. To be fair, I know a few people with autism use the R word amongst each other. It's kind of a friendly insult, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say I don't like have some, you know, inflammatory sort of what would be considered to be inflammatory, like words that I use amongst like my close friends. Yeah, but I mean, you're not a part of the group, dude. Weaponized autism. Yeah, I like that one.
Actual changes in your brain, like an axis that shifts, that like hurts your ability to cope with stress, your stress response. And there's just, especially, you know, the less you do it, there's always like a base level, a little bubble of anxiety or a little base level of stress that's completely normal when it comes to social situations. And it gets harder and harder to manage that the less you go out, and also, you know, with these brain changes that happen due to the internet, it causes social anxiety.
No.
Yup.
No.
Oh, I should have said this at the beginning when I was explaining more what autism is, but autism happens 4-to-1 in men. So there are 4 times as many men who have autism than women. And this makes sense because if you look at our brains, there's like a part of a woman, in women, there's a part of they're like a social part of the brain is a lot bigger, and just more.
It's a very hot button kind of issue here. Like, people are not too sure about why that exactly is. I wonder where he got his neuroscience degree from. What happened to my enlarged female social brain? Like the god of the gaps argument with him. Yeah. I mean, bless him, like, he doesn't really know much about it at all. I think this guy tackles, like, a lot of different varied topics, depending on, like, what's popular. Just wish he did a little bit of, a tiny bit of information, like, just stepped through the Google search a little bit to see more, to understand more. Just a little bit. Or talk to an autistic person who knows about this stuff. That would be good. That would be great.
Just more, like, sort of capable. They're more socially calibrated generally. So it makes sense that a lot more guys would be autistic.
In general, I would say. But.
And this is what we see with more, like, lonely dudes and everything. All right, running out of steam. Daddy got a lot of it out, I believe. As far as I'm aware, Daddy got what he had to say off of his chest. The internet gives you that tism. Did I talk about wasted autism? I think I did. How, like, yeah, I did. We're good. Fuck y'all.
I have no words. I feel like I've said all the words that needed to be said. If you're interested in his style of humour and takes on things, you can go check him out, but I definitely would not be going to this guy for anything related to psychology and neuroscience. Bless him.